Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you this Tuesday. A disturbing double murder.
One of the largest investigations Barrie police have ever had.
The connection between an accused killer and the victims.
Had they listened to us, my wife would be still alive.
A heartbroken husband left to care for a newborn.
It's a love story, and she said yes.
As the engagement era begins.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
A stunning twist in a grisly double murder case in Barrie, Ontario, north of Toronto, that has grown into one of the largest investigations the force has ever undertaken. Today, police provided new details. The victims and alleged killer knew each other, and all three lived in a homeless encampment. A man is under arrest and faces 33 criminal charges. CTV's John Woodward is in Barrie with more on this gruesome case. John.
Sandy, the investigation is focused on three people who used to live together at a homeless encampment here in Barrie. Two of them disappeared. Police have charged a third with their murder.
These were not random murders.
Barrie police speaking for the first time about the disturbing results of their weeks-long investigation into the disappearances of 45-year-old William Blake Robinson and 41-year-old David Kyle Cheesquay.
What began as a missing person investigation in January of this year was grown into one of the largest investigations Barrie police have ever had.
Charged is 52-year-old Robert Ladouceur, the unemployed man known as Tattoo Rob, facing gun and drug charges, as well as murder and indignity to human remains. He lived with the two men at a homeless encampment in Barrie, officers said. That encampment fenced off for weeks among the sites targeted in an extensive search. Their investigation put to rest speculation there are more victims or other suspects.
Incidents like this are shocking and understandably shake our community, but they are exceedingly rare.
Outside the encampment now, flowers and a heartfelt message. Many of the homeless people that once lived there have since moved on, some to a spot opposite the Barrie courthouse.
Like, for somebody to do that to someone else, it's pretty scary and unbelievable.
Justin Ouellette has lived on the streets of Barrie for 3 years, waiting for housing. He said he knew the man he called Blake.
Oh, he was like an average guy. Like, you know, he liked we hung out and went to parties and stuff.
It can happen to anyone, especially being homeless.
Another homeless man, Jesse French, said he avoided the encampment.
You see people come and go all the time, right? And you never know, sometimes people just disappear for good reason.
French said he was grateful to at least have an explanation in the men's disappearance. Barrie police dismissed speculation that they had a serial killer on their hands, but they did say more evidence is expected to come out in the court process. Ladouceur has a hearing scheduled this Friday. Sandy?
CTV's John Woodward in Barrie. A husband is calling for justice after an Ontario hospital accusing them of gross negligence after his wife died from sepsis after giving birth to their third child. Post-delivery, a bacterial infection developed into a life-threatening medical emergency. CTV's Adrian Gabriel spoke to the man who maintains his wife should have survived. Adrian.
Sandy, on June 19th, 40-year-old Ravinder Sidhu arrived here at Mississauga, Ontario's Credit Valley Hospital to deliver a healthy baby boy. Though sadly, just 4 days later, the mother of three was dead. The initial cause of death, organ failure, due to a Group A strep infection.
Roughly 6 hours after the delivery of her newborn baby, Sidhu said she felt like she had hypothermia. Freezing cold, she was at times struggling to speak. Her temperature spiked, as did her white blood cell count and heart rate, and she was withering in pain. For 2 days, her condition deteriorated. Pleading for painkillers, her family said she was only given Advil and Tylenol. It wasn't until an infection appeared visible on her leg that she was taken to the ICU and administered an antibiotic. By then, her husband says it was too late.
By that point, she was already being eaten alive by the bacteria, and she was already suffering the worst pain. We begged for help, which never arrived. Now I learned that sepsis is a race against time, but doctors never started the clock. Had they listened to us, my wife would be still alive and she would be with her family. I really hope that no other family has to go through this.
Sidhu's family have filed a complaint with Ontario's Patients Ombudsman and with the hospital. In 2023, there were 4,600 cases of invasive Group A strep uncovered in Canada, a 40% increase from 2019.
CTV News has asked the hospital if they've launched a specific review into the standard of care given to Ravinder Sidhu. Credit Valley responded in an email only saying that a thorough review is part of their standard practice, led by clinical experts. Sandy.
CTV's Adrian Gabriel. Mark Carney was busy on the international stage today, committing to extending Canada's NATO mission in Latvia for 3 years and pursuing new economic and military cooperation with Europe, something that includes a big-ticket item. CTV's Abigail Beeman is in Riga with the Prime Minister. And Abigail, talk to us about today's developments.
Sandy, the Prime Minister has landed in Latvia, where he will talk defense and meet with Canadian troops. But he spent the day in Germany window shopping on a massive defense spending initiative.
What class of submarines?
Prime Minister Mark Carney tours a shipyard. The German-Norwegian consortium TKMS is pitching Canada to buy its submarines.
Our subs are quieter than Canadian Snowfall, but tougher than a player in the Stanley Cup final.
In Berlin, the government announced it's narrowed its search for up to 12 new submarines to 2 companies, this one and South Korea's Hanwha.
It's not about buying the big shiny object from the showroom floor. It's about how you are going to sustain that capability over what will probably end up being 30 to 40 years.
Canada's submarine fleet is so old it will be decommissioned by 2035. Senior government officials describe the situation as having some urgency.
We need to be able to have year-round fleets in all 3 coasts under quite demanding conditions. So that's how the field narrows quite quickly.
In addition to tricky technical requirements, the government wants a purchase as massive as this one to have an equal investment in Canada.
Really positive indication with this announcement today, which is atypical for the way Canada's generally approached big procurements, and based on a project budget that could get into like $100 billion range. This could end up being the single most expensive and largest defense acquisition that we've ever undertaken.
TKMS's CEO said they were open to building in Canada, which would be a first.
The customer is always right? So if they want or demand for special, let's say, reasons to build them in Canada, we would also be able for that.
Wednesday, the Prime Minister will meet Canadian troops here in Latvia. Tonight, he announced he will extend the NATO mission Canada leads here by another 3 years. Sandy?
Okay, Abigail Beeman in Riga. Well, the Prime Minister's point man on trade, Dominic LeBlanc, went to Washington to meet with his American counterpart, a potentially crucial week in the ongoing trade war. CTV senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture is in the U.S. Capitol. And Mike, they met, right? So who else was there and what did they talk about?
Yeah, tariffs were likely at the heart of their discussion. We know who else was there. It was the Canadian ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman, as well as Marc-André Blanchard, who is the chief of staff to the Prime Minister. Now, we've been told that it was constructive, productive, and also lengthy, to the point it was supposed to be 60 minutes and it lasted 90 minutes, perhaps a sign that things are progressing well. Now, we also know that Dominic LeBlanc is reportedly going to stay in Washington, D.C. overnight. Unclear if he has more meetings tomorrow, but it is a positive sign that perhaps he's open to them. Sandy?
All right, Mike in Washington. Thanks, Mike. Mark Carney says his government will be revealing several multi-million-dollar investments in infrastructure.
Our government is in the process of unleashing $500 billion of investment in energy infrastructure, port infrastructure, particularly intelligence infrastructure as well, with AI.
Last month, Carney confirmed a projects office will be operational by early September. Now, the Prime Minister has already pitched the idea of sending more liquid natural gas to Europe. But where does oil fit into the picture, considering Ottawa already owns the Trans Mountain Pipeline? CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashti Capellos, put that question to the man running the pipeline. And Vashti, what did he tell you?
Hi, Sandy. Before I get to what the CEO told me, I've got to show you what's behind me, because this is the first time cameras like ours have actually been inside the terminal where TMX ends and where oil is shipped out of Canada to destinations like China, Japan, Korea, and the United States. You'll remember all the political controversy over TMX. Well, this is actually what it looks like. I did sit down with the CEO, of TMX, and I really wanted to know whether another pipeline like this was feasible, whether, for example, TMX would be behind something like that if, in fact, the government decided to pursue something in that vein. The CEO kind of threw cold water on that. His preference, his advice to the federal government is rather optimize TMX first.
It's much harder to build another one of the, another TMX somewhere. And for that reason, optimize the kit that you have, which you can do in steps over time, and then add capacity as it's needed. And then you have time to evaluate the bigger issue, which is, do you need another pipeline somewhere?
So what's significant about that is it's kind of another significant or important voice throwing cold water on the idea of the federal government building a pipeline that might end up, for example, on that big list of projects that they're going to announce in the fall, projects of national interest. It sounds more and more likely that there will have to be a private backer if something like that ends up happening. Okay. Sandy?
Thanks for this, Vashti. Well, more bad news delivered to Canada Post today. The National Mail Service losing hundreds of millions in its second quarter, with parcel revenue and volumes falling dramatically. CTV's Rachel Aiello digs deeper into the cost of the continuing labor dispute. Hi, Rachel.
Sandy, it's Canada Post's largest loss before tax in a single quarter. And the major drop is being directly linked to consumers' concerns that another strike could delay their deliveries. Canada Post lost $407 million between April and June. Its profits deteriorating, due in part to a dramatic decline in parcel customers. Revealing the record loss, Canada Post said it continues to confront significant operational and structural challenges, and the ongoing labor uncertainty has contributed significantly. Last year's strike and the threat of more disruption this spring prompted this hobby shop owner, who for nearly 40 years loved and relied on Canada Post, to pivot.
That was why I had to make the move and say we can't rely 100% on one source.
He now lets his customers across the country choose their courier.
I've got to run a business and I can't shut down for a month or month and a half at a time.
The uncertainty is shared by Canada Post workers, the union says, as contract negotiations with the Crown Corporation remain stalled.
It affects us every day, and when you're going to get a mortgage or you're going to buy a car, those are things that you worry about. Do you have a job in the future?
The minister responsible for Canada Post, Joel Lightbound, called its financial situation deeply troubling. And with the Crown Corporation on track to record a larger loss in 2025 than it did last year, Lightbound said he'll be keeping a close eye. Sandy?
Okay, Rachel. Well, we are keeping a close eye on a wildfire in Nova Scotia's Annapolis County, which has doubled in size, forcing more residents to flee. The Long Lake fire has left more than 1,000 people wondering if there will be anything left to come home to. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth now on the agonizing wait, but also a bit of relief in sight.
Sandy, after receiving minimal rainfall for the past 2 months, Nova Scotia did receive some much-needed rain last night. It did help, but not enough to bring relief and extinguish this wildfire, which has been burning for close to 2 weeks. Luann Eisner's emotions are still raw 2 days after being ordered to evacuate her home with the out-of-control Long Lake wildfire burning nearby.
I was thinking that... Sorry.
Yeah.
I was grateful. I was grateful that we had an alert.
Around 500 homes or properties have been evacuated. 12 days after Rob Howie and his family were told to flee West Dalhousie, he's still waiting for news on the condition of his property.
Lots of my friends and neighbors have lost their homes.
I don't know about mine for sure. I've heard some rumors.
The wildfire, burning for 13 days, is more than 80 square kilometers in size. Crews are working nonstop in dangerous conditions to try and bring it under control.
Even though it may not be described as extreme in terms of large flames and you know, the volumes of smoke we saw on Sunday, it's still burning very intensely and deep in the ground.
The smoke hovering over this area has prompted air quality alerts for 4 Nova Scotia counties, including some areas that are roughly 200 kilometers away from the wildfire. Sandy.
Thank you, Paul. Coming up, massive protests and mounting pressure to end a war. A second day of massive nationwide protests across Israel. Families of the hostages ramping up pressure on the government, calling for the release of those still in captivity and an end to the war in Gaza. CTV's Heather Wright on this and what came out of a security cabinet meeting to discuss next steps. Heather.
Well, Sandy, that cabinet meeting has now ended, and according to Israeli media, there was no discussion about this 60-day ceasefire and hostage release deal agreed to by Hamas. This meeting, of course, happening against the backdrop of nationwide protests and intensifying suffering in Gaza. On a highway outside of Tel Aviv, protesters burned tires, blocked traffic, and demanded an end to the war in Gaza.
Accept the deal that's on the table to end the bloodshed that's going on.
These protests are the largest anti-war demonstrations to take place in Israel since the Hamas-led attacks of October 7th, which triggered the war in Gaza. They come as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces mounting pressure, both at home and abroad, over the deteriorating situation in the enclave. On Monday, Israel struck one of the only functioning hospitals in southern Gaza, then hit the facility a second time as journalists and rescue workers rushed to the scene. At least 20 people were killed, including 5 journalists. Israel says the strike was targeting a Hamas camera and will investigate what happened.
And I've worked in that hospital.
Nicole Lessard spent May, June, and July working in Gaza as a nurse with Médecins Sans Frontières. She says the suffering is constant. There's not enough food or medicine, and since Israel handed over aid distribution to the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, getting aid can be deadly.
When the sites made an announcement they were going to open for food distribution, we would shortly receive mass casualties to the hospital. They keep the doors closed and then open them. People rush in. The food is dropped in the center, and it's basically like a fight to the death.
As Israel pushes ahead with its military offensive in Gaza City, there are not only fears in Gaza but in Israel as well, with approximately 20 living hostages still being held in the enclave.
The Prime Minister has really gone rogue now. He's going against his Chief of Staff. He's going against the hostage families. He's going entirely against the international community.
Today, the United Nations demanded that Israel's investigation into the killing of journalists at Nasser Hospital comes with accountability, noting that over 270 journalists have been killed in Gaza since the war began. Sandy.
CTV's Heather Wright. An ominous scene in Arizona. A towering wall of dust swallowed the city of Phoenix, knocking out power and grounding flights. Heavy rain and wind followed the storm, adding to travel delays. Still had a swift response after he put a ring on it. The Royal Canadian Air Force and U.S. Coast Guard joined forces for emergency medical evacuations from a cruise ship.
And just next to, looks like there's a pool in the front, so just aft of that pool.
The urgent call came from the Ruby Princess, which was about 85 kilometers south of Tofino off Vancouver Island. Rescue efforts involved Canadian and American helicopters to airlift 2 passengers. Well, after 2 years of dating, music superstar Taylor Swift will be walking down the aisle with Travis Kelce, one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history.
That the love that you're looking for is the love that you had.
The engagement confirmed in a joint Instagram post with several photos and the caption, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." In one picture, Kelsey is seen on one knee presenting Swift with an engagement ring. She also shared a close-up of the ring. No words yet on wedding plans. Well, word of the engagement reportedly broke the internet. Joining us now, Virgin Radio's Miles Galloway. Okay, Miles, why is there so much interest in this news?
You know, we are witnessing a moment of pop culture history in real time, and we have been since their speculated romance began back in October of 2023. Let's not forget that Travis shot his shot on his podcast before attending an Eras Tour show to see Taylor Swift perform live in Kansas City, where he made a friendship bracelet with his phone number on. Flash forward to today, and I think the ring is slightly more impressive than that handmade friendship bracelet. But it would be big enough if it was just Taylor Swift engaged to some guy, some good-looking, handsome guy. But the fact that he is also a star in his own field,
no ordinary
one of the biggest players in the NFL, it just makes it 10 times bigger.
Okay, I have to ask you this. Now, Taylor Swift has had her heart broken so many times, and certainly that was the inspiration behind most of her songs. So you have to wonder what happens to her music going forward if she's happy.
I think Swifties might be torn. There'll be a lot that love those emotional breakup songs, and then others will just be happy that she's finally found the one. I know one thing's for sure. Taylor Swift is officially in her bridal era.
Okay, there are going to be a lot of references to eras for sure over the next little while. And next will be the wedding era. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. A happy ending to the tale, T-A-L-E, of a missing cat 2 weeks after the pet escaped from a car while on a BC ferry.
Did you find that kitty? Yes, you did.
A crew member spotted Luigi, the cat, under a trailer, prompting a volunteer group named Halo's Pet Rescue to take action. Bait stations were deployed and cameras were set up, and Halo, the rescue dog, you saw a little bit of Halo, and we'll get to him again, sniffed out the cat's location, allowing the owner to coax it out. There's Halo for the emotional reunion.
It was amazing. It was so good. It was like too good to be true. Nobody gave up hope. Everybody was committed to finding Luigi.
The volunteers credit the remarkable dog for the rescue.
He was certainly not visible crawling under there with a flashlight by any stretch, but the dog said, no, he's there, it's all good.
It certainly was all good. The cat rescue group spent hours and hours, however, at the ferry terminal searching before Luigi was eventually located and found. Again, a happy ending. Thank you for sharing your time with us this Tuesday. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up. See you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.